Welcome aboard, shipmates. This is Real Sailors, Real Sea Stories, a training program created for the United States Naval Sea Cadet Corps by our supporters and friends at the Naval Talent Acquisition Group in Philadelphia. I'm your host, Warrant Officer David Sheets of the Naval Sea Cadet Corps. I am joined by my all-Navy support crew of NC1, Quinlan, who's our PAO, and for our standard technical support director, who's on leave right now, STG1 Lewison, we have a fill-in ABH3 Morales. Cadets, you know him. He's presented on here before. So he's filling in the background. He's doing his best. We're back live, hopefully. So here we go. Today's topic is being in the Naval Reserves. And we're going to find out all about that, how you can serve in the Navy and also do great things in the civilian sector. And our presenter today is Petty Officer First Class Dembowski of the Naval Recruiting District in Atlanta. So, cadets, sorry for the delay. We're back up and running. So, since we are live, do us a favor. If you have questions, and I hope that you do, put them into the chat window. Do that while the presentation's going, and I'll read them out, and we'll get them answered right away. So, interact. Make sure you get your questions out there, and we'll get our speakers to respond to your items that you're interested in. So, also, complete the online quiz. That'll be made available to you after the live recording is over. Get your 2 hours of virtual drill credit, and that accomplishment of that, you've completed this. So, cadets, I want to warn you one more time. Some of the quizzes are not getting back to you because you're not filling out proper email addresses. So make sure that you're taking your time, filling both them and your CO's email address correctly, and get them out there, get that credit, get your responses, and everything will be great. So, without any further delay, Petty Officer Dembowski, this ship is all yours.
Hello, everybody. I'm NC1 Dembowski, here to talk to you guys about the reserves. I have been in the Navy for 12 years. I actually re-enlisted May of this year for another 6. And the reason why I joined is I was tired of school and I wanted a guaranteed job. My father worked his whole career. None of my parents went to college, so it was always instilled at an early age that work ethic gets you where you need to be. And the best part about my job as a career counselor is being a part of someone's life story. I think people have this idea of what recruiters are, but being able to kind of be outside of that norm and being able to help somebody along their path and being able to see these people kind of grow in their own career and come back and thank you for everything you did. It's been really, really rewarding. I had 2 top Navy memories. It was hard to kind of narrow it down between the 2 of them. And both of them were in recruiting. But the first one was I was able to watch a former future sailor swear into becoming a U.S. citizen. It was about a week before he was supposed to go to boot camp and his permanent resident card expired. So we went to the citizenship office and because I was there, they said, oh, well, how about you swear in right now? And that was really, really, really impressive. And being able to pin a rank on a junior sailor who was meritoriously promoted was also definitely up there. Tell
us a little bit about your, that feeling of seeing that future sailor being sworn in as a U.S. citizen, because we've had a few folks on our presentations, and it's very interesting the fact that the Navy has so many people coming in from all over the world, which are, that want to be part of this, right? So can you tell us a little bit about this person and a little bit about their Navy voyage, if you wouldn't mind?
Sure. I will tell you as much as I can recall. But I will tell you one thing you touched on, sir, is one of the biggest foundations and one of the reasons why the U.S. Navy is the greatest that it is because the amount of diversity that is within our ranks. I have met people from all walks of life, permanent residents, citizens everywhere from all over the world, and the diversity is definitely one of the biggest assets that we have. I can't recall what country he was from originally. I want to say Nigeria, and if he watches this, I'm just gonna apologize in advance. But he joined, and then like I said previously, his permanent resident card expired, and you have to have either that or a naturalization certificate before you go to boot camp. If one of them expired, we had to get something in its place. So, but being a part of that, it was because somebody who was born here in the United States will never understand what that's like. I have put in a lot of people that are permanent residents. I've actually, in the reserve, one of the first people that I befriended in my unit, we worked on his citizenship paperwork while he was in the reserve. He was from Trinidad. So one of the things some people don't know is that just going through boot camp will make you eligible to apply for citizenship, which is what we did with him.
Oh, okay. Okay, great. So then back to you. So you're describing your parents, right? And then
Yes.
yourself. So when you said that you were tired of going to school, are you talking about high school, you didn't want to go into college, or you were in college and you said, okay, enough of this for right now?
I joined the Navy about a year after I graduated high school. I was done with school period, which
Okay.
I tell people is ironic because now that I have started college almost 10 years ago, I can't stop going to college.
Great.
So yes, I'm almost done with my master's degree. So
Oh, fantastic. And master's degree in what?
it's crisis and trauma counseling.
Oh, okay. Fantastic. So back to, your decision. So, did you have, any preconceived notions of the Navy, or what made you decide Navy versus maybe one of the other branches? Because you had choices, I'm sure.
Yeah, yes, sir. I initially tried to join the Marine Corps, but I am partially deaf in one ear, and the hearing loss waiver did not get approved. I had no intention of going into the Army. Nothing against them. It's just it wasn't what I wanted to do. I also did not have any intention of going into the Air Force. But my parents, I've grown up around a body of water, a lake, for almost my entire life. So I know I wanted to be around the water at some point. So I got walked from the Marine office to the Navy office, and I was lucky enough to find a recruiter who was patient with me through the whole process. He's actually still at my command. So as a chief, but yeah, that's kind of how I arrived at that decision. I joined the Navy as a reservist. My original job was an equipment operator, and it qualified me for a pretty large signing bonus. But like I said, I'm partially deaf, so it kind of negated my contract when I got to boot camp. So I had to reclassify to LS then storekeeper was my second option.
Oh, okay. Okay, I got that. So, our cadets are, they're contemplating their futures, right? And some of the questions that come out historically from our cadets is, what was recruit training like? And it's unique to everybody, right? Everybody has their own experiences and stories and stuff like that. So, you came from a nice place in Georgia. Next thing you know, you're, I assume, Great Lakes, right?
Yes, sir.
Which isn't such a great lake. So, tell us a little bit about that. What was it like when you first got there, and was there any thought of, man, this was some great decision I just had?
I think everybody, when you get off the bus when you're there at boot camp, I think everybody has that what did I sign up for moment.
Right.
The reserves and active duty, they both go to recruit training command together. There's not a different boot camp or anything. So we're treated amongst the active duty component the exact same. I'm trying to think what was the hardest part. Anybody who says, it really, looking back at it retrospect, it wasn't the hardest thing that I ever did, but at the time it was definitely difficult. Having to rely on other people to make the right choice was probably the hardest part. Everybody comes from all over the United States, and even sometimes outside the United States, to come to one place in boot camp. 17 to 39, kids, no kids, all sorts of orientations. And the whole point of boot camp is to bring everybody to the same level and bring everybody back up to the same level. And getting everybody on that program was probably the hardest part. Having somebody who couldn't fold their socks right, so we're doing push-ups, or somebody who didn't eat in enough time, so we're doing push-ups and stuff like that was probably the hardest part for me.
All right. And, knowing what you know now, and particularly, the field that you're in, helping sailors get started in the Navy, is there any particular words of advice you could give the cadets if they're contemplating going into the Navy? It's like, if you do this, you'll be much better off because I've seen it before, and those who don't do this are, doomed.
There's two things that I would give. Like I said previously, people have this misconceived notion about what recruiters are, and that is not, and I say that as a recruiter. So if you don't understand anything or you're interested, bug the crap out of your recruiter. Ask them a million questions. That's what we're here to do. If you need some answers or some clarification, please ask the recruiter. Just pick their brain. And the second piece of advice, something that was told to me at one point, is find somebody that has what you want and make them give it to you. And it's almost like a twofold kind of set of advice. So it's working your tail off to get what you want and finding the right mentors. But at the flip side, when you get to that level that you're trying to get to, bring somebody up with you and mentor them. But definitely ask as many questions. Don't feel like you're getting pressured into a decision. You at the end of the day, your signature is the one that's on the contract, not mine. So you have to be the one that when you close your eyes at night and you go to sleep, that you're okay with your decision. And sometimes that means asking 100 questions and making educated decisions. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to make an educated decision.
Okay. That's very good advice. Thank you.
To continue, I was in two different units in the reserves. One of them, the first one that's listed, CNFK, is ComNav Korea, was a Korean unit that was towards the end of my reserve career. And then I was in a supply unit that specifically did support for Bahrain. I never went. I had some opportunities, but I never did. So actually, the individual who's listed with me here is the guy who was from Trinidad, who we worked together to get his citizenship. But the reserves, which I'm told is not a whole lot different than what the Sea Cadets are responsible for, as far as which are weekends and the 2 weeks of the active duty period. There's a lot of administration that goes on in those drill weekends. Reserves, our whole job is to support the active element. So if that means that I need to update my certifications or maintain my qualifications, I get that bulk done on that weekend. Then from once I left the reserves, they had an opportunity to become a recruiter. It's called a CANREC, a canvasser recruiter. And funny enough, when they were looking for recruiters at the time, they said they only wanted male recruiters. And me being stubborn, I was not going to take that answer. So I pestered the now NC1, who was in charge of the program, pretty much twice a day for about 3 weeks. And he got my contract kind of slid under there. And that's how I got it.
So why they only want males? It seems kind of odd.
I don't know. It was probably a demographic thing, making sure that they had, an even amount of people. That's a very good question. Okay.
But what you said before is if you want something, you go for it, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So the first no is not the final answer here. If it's important to you, press on.
Right. And that kind of goes back to finding somebody who has what you want and getting it. And that's probably one of the biggest components about the reserves is it's very self-managed. I was the one who had to make sure that all my drills were there. If I wanted to go on any sort of active duty time, I was the one who had to research it. I had to apply. I had to follow up on all of that. There's a lot of people that are there in the active duty side that are full-time, to provide support for active duty that we just didn't have access to just because it was on the drill weekends. I served along police chiefs. I served with Delta pilots. Pretty much anybody. Oh, my previous commander was a Department of Justice employee. I did some time as attached to the reserve hospital, working in their medical the supply room, working on reorganizing and organizing the stock room, stuff like that. I did that for about 4 months. But as long as there's availability, you can apply for active spots. That's how I got to become CANREC, was they had an availability and I applied for it.
So, just so we're reinforcing really what the Navy Reserves is about, like for service. Okay, so I'm familiar with the reserves as well. So when I was active duty and then I went reserves as I was going through college, right? But my reserve duty was different. I was flight crew on P-3 Orions, and you had to go to reserve squadron, right? And you had to be on the aircraft, and that's what you did, and you flew, and that was great, right? But it seems like depending on the rate, the way you're describing it, and in particular, like a rate like an LS, you can apply that rate anywhere that has a need for that skill. Right?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
so that's a lot of flexibility for your required 2-week active duty time.
Absolutely. For us, when they put out the schedule at the beginning of the fiscal year, it was like an Excel document, and it was certain dates and certain places. So I was able to apply to go to Spain, and I was able to apply to go to Italy, and I scheduled it for a time that was convenient around my life schedule. Another young lady that was in the reserves with me was going to law school full time. So she applied for her 2 weeks to happen in the middle of the summer so she didn't miss any class. Right. But so just because, you're locked into a certain rate in the reserves doesn't mean that that's the only experience that you're going to have. You can, as long as your chain of command is okay with it, you can go shadow another rate. You can go shadow the medical building. I spent a good amount of time over there just reorganizing medical records and things like that. But as long as your chain of command is okay with it, you can get a whole lot of different cross training. So that the flexibility, as you said, is definitely there.
No, so back to, I know this is your show, and I'm talking about me. But, like when I was in the reserves and going to college, right? So in the summers, I would double up on flight time, and we spent our deployments in Bermuda. So during the year, I'm a full-time college student, and in the summers, I would be living in Bermuda. That did not suck, right? So, So cadets, there's a lot of advantages here. So our question, our cadets are starting to ask questions, and this is kind of an odd one, but I think it's kind of relevant because with the different pictures that you're showing here is,
oh boy,
what is your favorite uniform? And I caught you when you were drinking, so I apologize about that.
So the picture that's on the top is utilities, to show how long I've been in, which is no longer a uniform that's issued. And I've seen a lot of different uniform changes. We also now the Navy has the Navy Service uniform, which replaced the working whites and the working blues. But I will tell you, the dress whites that I have on is probably one of my favorites. I think it looks a lot sharper now that they've kind of tailored it a little bit and we got the piping and stuff. I really like the dress whites.
Oh, that's cool. And the fact that females are wearing Dixie cups now and not the other cover, right?
Yes, I was a little against it for a little while, but it is easier to wear and it fits our heads a little bit better. And being able to be a lot more uniform it looks better.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yes. Is there any other questions that I can answer
Not right now. But
okay.
there's a standard question that our cadets like to ask, so I'm going to give that to you at the end. So I don't want you to be nervous about it, but go ahead. Don't worry about it.
Okay. After I became a CANREC, I applied towards becoming a Navy counselor, which is a career recruiter. And I applied in a different program than probably some individuals who've already been on your show. I'm what they call hometown, which is production. I stay local in the area to stay with my community. If I had aspirations to make chief, I would have to switch over to the management side. But staying here as a hometown recruiter, I can stay in my community, and I have roots here coming from the reserves, and it was a little difficult to have to think about leaving them. So I'm very, very blessed to be in that rate. It's not something that's always available, and please, I don't want to misspeak, but I don't think it's necessarily available anymore. I was very lucky to get in when I did. But to talk about the reserves and full-time support, when I was in the reserves, I worked for a police department. I was a dispatcher, fire, EMS, and police. I preferred the overnight shift because I was also in school full-time. Looking back on it, I have no idea how I managed it, because I worked from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. I slept, and then I was on campus Monday through Thursday from 3 to 9, and went to the gym and went to work, and that was my whole life for probably about 2 years that I just went to school.
So where'd you go to college?
I have a very diverse college background.
Well, most people do. Okay.
I started out at what was Kaplan University, which online, I don't think that's what they're called anymore. And then I went to Georgia Gwinnett College, which it's not too far from where I live, and it was down the street from the police department that I worked for. And I got my bachelor's degree through Liberty University online, and it's where I'm going to get my master's as well.
Okay. Back to your experience with the police department. So how did you arrange for that? Because, that's a pretty demanding job, right? Dispatching, getting people where that can be pretty high pressure. Not like the Navy is something simple, right? But how'd you get involved with that, and what was that like?
So I joke that it was harder to get a job working for the police department than it was to join the military.
Okay.
But I was the youngest employee at the police department for 2 or 3 years. I went in, I got through with boot camp and job school, A school, and I came back and I looked at my life and was like, I need something to sustain me. I need something with stability. And I applied on a fluke thing, and they called me back a year later, or not a year later, excuse me. It was a year after I went to boot camp that I started working for the police department. So it was a really good experience. I will say that. It was a really good experience.
So do you think your background in the Navy helped you get a leg up as far as their interest?
Oh, absolutely. If I did not have Navy on my resume, I don't know if they would have taken the time out of their day to interview me and all the other process that went with it. Because before I joined the Navy, it was strictly retail. I worked at a local mall, but there was nothing substantial in my resume that made me stick out from anybody else. Not to mention that the things that you learn in the Navy or boot camp, especially the attention to detail and discipline, those are some of the things that employers are looking for, and being able to, and respect for authority is, believe it or not always present in everybody.
I find that hard to believe. Okay.
But having those components, I think, really kind of set me apart from my peers, and why I was able to get a job offer there.
Oh, very good. Thank you.
Absolutely. But while I was working for the police department, there's a federal law. It's called USERRA, the Uniform Service Employment Rights and Reemployment Act, which states that if an individual is in the military, they can't be fired to perform their military service. So anytime that I would go away on my drill weekends or for my active service, I was always covered under that law. It was really difficult working the night shift because there was a couple times where I would have just gotten off work at 7 and then I went to drill that day. It's a little difficult, but like I said earlier, it's hard looking back on it, and how did I manage it all? I have no idea.
Well, that's why you do these things earlier in life, right? So I'm going to talk like old guy here for a second, but significantly harder to do it later. So yeah, and cadets, keep that in mind. You're right now, what you're doing in high school and everything, you're firing on all cylinders, right? And the only reason that you would end up slowing down is a choice, right? That it's not important to you, that you're not doing it. So what Petty Officer Dembowski is showing you right now is it's amazing what people can accomplish if it's important to them. Yeah.
That's 1,000% correct. And that was probably a big component as to why I volunteered for recruiting, which ended up being full-time support, is I got to a point where as a dispatcher, it's a very rewarding job, but it's not always, the benefits aren't the best. Police officers and those who work for the police departments they're really underpaid, just like teachers and anybody in public service, in my opinion. So I needed something with a little bit more of a financial increase. And so they had the recruiting option and I volunteered for it. So it's nice. I get full active duty benefits, just like anybody on active duty. And because I'm a hometown NC, I stay local in my community. I get, like it says there, I get to build up longer relationships, which I've seen in recruiting. I've been recruiting almost 7 years now. That it has people that I talked to 3 years ago, people I still talk to now, and things like that.
Do you find it a little bit more challenging as far as making rank in the reserves?
So I joined the Navy. Well, when I was reclassified to a storekeeper, again, not to show my age, but they merged us with the postal clerks, our rate, several years ago. And when they merged us in that rate, it got bottlenecked. So there was very low advancement to LS2, LS1, and I had taken the LS1 exam in the reserves twice, and there was the last time that I took it in the reserves, there was a 0% chance I was making rank. None. But when I volunteer for recruiting duty, you're compared against a different set of peers than you are in the reserves. And once I was able to be compared against other CANRECs, I made rank the first time I took the test. So that was nice. But making chief, that's something I would have to switch over from hometown to management to do. And maybe one day, but for my family situation, it was a sacrifice that I had to make.
Sure. Absolutely.
So, but I would love to be a chief one day and put on anchors. I think it's a good job there, but
sometimes choices, right? So that's okay. Right.
Let me see here. I think I have the video. Let me go ahead and stop share. Let me put this up, guys. I'm sorry. Let me pull the video up real quick. It's a real quick video about the reserves, kind of gives some other information on it. Let me pull this up real quick. Okay. Here you go. Can you see it okay? I mean, it's a black screen right now. Is it good?
Here.
My name is Thomas
Can you
Cedarback.
see it?
In 1998, we decided we needed a little extra money, so I joined the Navy Reserve. The Navy Reserve is the part-time job for the Navy. You do 2 days a month, 2 weeks a year, and I joined the Seabees because I was working in that field.
My name is Eric Robinson. I'm a database analyst for an insurance company in Jersey City. For my Navy job, I am what's known as a boatswain's mate, the jack of all trades. Of course, everyone will ask, well, why does an IT guy not do IT in the Navy? I said, well, I like to be versatile.
My name is Jennifer Wallace. I'm a lieutenant commander in the United States Navy Reserve.
My name is Aaron Sarathy. I'm a commander in the United States Navy Reserve.
I'm a wife, a mom, a dentist, and a Navy reservist. I don't know, it just kind of all fits together.
My name is Michelle McKeon. I'm a Chief Hospital Corpsman here at Naval Health Clinic, New England. I am the Senior Enlisted Advisor for my detachment. We are a hospital unit. I am a single mom. I have 2 boys. They're very supportive. When you are a reservist, the biggest support you need is from your family.
You have your family, you have your civilian job, and you have the reserve side. Now what you got to do is make the reserve fit your civilian and your family. You don't make the other 2 fit the reserve.
I'm very proud that my dad serves as a CB. Not only is he a hard worker, dedicated, but he's also very compassionate.
I actually got laid off 3 years ago, and I was mobilized, so it kept me off the unemployment line for about 2.5 years, which was great.
With the Navy Reserve in my life, I've been able to expand, to learn new skills. It's made me a better person entirely.
It'll put you in environments that, as a surgeon, I don't get to do in my regular day-to-day job. It's been a really good experience for us.
I chose the Navy Reserve because it gives me a balance. I can do my civilian job and then have that military experience.
Best part-time in America right now, 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year. My name is Thomas Cederbeck. I'm a Senior Chief in the United States Navy Reserve, and I'm a CB.
Jennifer Wallace. I'm a Lieutenant Commander in the United States Navy Reserve, and I'm a General Dentist.
Aaron Searthy. I'm a Commander in the United States Navy Reserve and an oral and maxillofacial surgeon.
Michelle McKeon. I'm a Chief Hospital Corpsman in the United States Navy Reserve.
Eric Robinson. I'm a boatswain's mate 2nd class in the United States Navy Reserve.
Awesome.
That's a nice video.
Yeah, the America's Navy YouTube channel has a lot of really good videos out there. My favorite are the little 2-3 minute videos with all the different rates.
Right.
Just poking around on there. There's a lot of really good info out there on that.
So, and that goes back to what you were saying right at the very beginning, right? So the best way you can, be part of this is for you to be an educated customer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And since there's all this information out there, it makes it easy.
Absolutely. There's so much. However, I will say that just because there's a lot of good information, there's also a lot of bad information, and trying to decipher between the 2 of them can be difficult. But the America's Navy YouTube channel has a lot of really good information that's on there. I think a lot more information is more readily accessible than it was in 2008 when I joined. I still had a cell phone where you paid for minutes. So the amount of information that's out there is definitely a lot more than what it was.
Right. And think about it too. I mean, cadets, we're talking about just getting background information. Would you possibly buy a car anymore without researching it? Well, this is like your life, right? So, all we want you to do is to be exposed to things and for you to make the right decision for you and your family, right? But it's all out there. Don't expect anybody to hand it to you. Use the thinking part of your brain and do some research so you are a educated customer.
Absolutely. These are just some pictures. I had a very hard time trying to narrow down the pictures that I have. But the top 2 on the left is the time when I watched the young man swear in, and then when he came back after he had went to boot camp and everything. And the bottom left 2 are when I was able to pin on first class to a junior sailor. So those 2 proudest career moments, and being able to be involved in JROTC with one of my local schools has also been very fun. And then being in the division that I'm in with other recruiters, on the top right picture, making a lot of long-lasting friendships has been one of the best things about being on recruiting duty.
So that's a pretty scenic location. Where were you?
That is Stone Mountain, Georgia. It's a big mountain and that you can climb. It's a little over a mile, if I'm not mistaken, up to the top, but it's pretty steep. It's a good workout, I'll tell you. It's a good workout.
Oh, fantastic.
So that's my whole presentation there. I thought this was kind of interesting as far as everything going on with coronavirus and fist bumps and stuff. It's about as close as we can get to people right now.
Well,
So
So that being said, you're a hometown recruiter. You're interacting with people, but people are kind of in lockdown, and people are not interacting. So how's that going? What's that like?
It's been an adjustment. I've seen a lot of change in recruiting in 7 years, and the way that people interact and get to know each other now is very different than how it was when I first started. We rely so much now on digital media and social media platforms and stuff like that to talk to individuals. FaceTime, Zoom, all these different platforms that are out there for us to talk to somebody without necessarily being face to face. So it's been a little difficult, but in some ways I think it's better for some people.
Okay. So here's a question from one of our cadets, and he's very interested. Yes, it is a he. In the aviation field. Okay. So there's plenty of aviation rates. We've talked about many of them on our show, right? But if someone came into your office or where you're working and said, "Hey, I'm interested in aviation. I really like airplanes. I like that whole deal," right? How would you help them focus on maybe a career choice in that field? Like, how would you start to guide them in some direction?
So there are a lot of people that come in and they're interested in a specific job field because of what they see on TV or what they see on the internet, etc. However, in aviation specifically, it's not just a test requirement. There's a physical requirement that goes on with it. If they have no depth perception or if they're colorblind, then unfortunately that's something that they might not ever get to do. So we start trying to look at stuff like that and what you're qualified for. On top of that, it's trying to understand where the connection is with aviation. Did you were your parents pilots? Was that you saw a movie when you were 3 and thought that's my destiny? Kind of see where that's at and try to find a way to align everything that the Navy has up to meeting that goal, that lifelong dream.
Okay, all right, and that makes sense. A lot of our cadets, it's interesting when they first start in the Sea Cadet Corps, they also have some preconceived notions of certain job fields and things like that. Mm-hmm. And in particular, something to do with special forces, something to do with SEALs, BUDS, all that type of stuff, right? Do you have candidates come into your office and talk about that? And what type of advice do you give them? Just say, for example, that they meet the medical portion, not the physical, right? Because then that'd be test. But say there isn't any inherent reason why they could not qualify other than their own abilities. What would you, or how would you get them on their journey?
So I have put in a good handful amount of people into. There's 5 special warfare programs that we have. And I put a handful of people into all 5 of them. SEAL, which is SWCS, Special Warfare Combat Crewman, Navy Diver, EOD, Ordnance Disposal, and Air Rescue. We have local mentors in our area that we kind of put the interested applicants in touch with. I've never been to BUDS. I'm not even going to pretend that I know the first thing about BUDS, so I'm not the person to ask about how BUDS was like, but having that resource has definitely been helpful. But it's SEALs and special warfare as a whole is so much more mental, like perseverance and pushing through the suck and just keep moving. It's so much more than I think people realize. I think that part of it is underestimated. Might not necessarily be as physical as some people anticipate, but it's going to be very uncomfortable. And being able to not quit, people, you have your threshold of where you think your capacity is, and the whole program, the SEALs, is to push it past that. Even though you don't want to go, you're going to get there. The swimming component is also one of the bigger disqualifiers. So getting in a pool, the local scouts and the local mentors in those programs can help train the different strokes that they use. But it goes back to talking to your recruiter and making sure that you pick their brain, because they have those resources that are out there available. Even if you don't want to be in the program, like, having advice on how to just swim or anything like that is definitely something that I would recommend. But perseverance is the number one word I would use to associate with that program.
Oh, great. So back to your reserve time, right? Where have you traveled? What have you seen? Because it's been more than Georgia, right? So,
yes,
go on.
I went to Spain for about 3 weeks, and then the guy who I had in my PowerPoint earlier, who's from Trinidad, he went with me. But I've been right there at the edge of the Mediterranean and been able to look across the sea and see Africa. Some of the most beautiful blue waters, I can't even begin to describe it. The culture over there is so different than anything I've experienced here. The food is a lot better than anything I've experienced here, just because the soil is different. Their vegetables are fresher. I had a much better time in Spain than I did in Italy when I went. I went to Sigonella, but I think it was destined to be bad after they lost all my luggage, and that's a whole another story for another time. But Spain was the best. And going back to where you can volunteer for lots of different opportunities, I volunteered for different schools for qualifications through the reserves. So I went to almost every base in California for instructor school. JLOTS, which is Joint Logistics Over the Shore. That was more required for when I went to the Korean unit, where we would be responsible for showing up on a shore and setting up a camp, if you will. And then I went to aviation supply school. Anything and everything I could do, I tried to volunteer for. So that's primarily where I've been.
So back to like training. So you went to recruit training just like active duty, right? And then you also went to a school just like active duty, right?
Absolutely. Okay. Yes, sir.
Okay. Then after you completed A school, then what happened? Were there C schools and things, or did you go back to 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks out of the year as a reservist, or how did that transpire?
So when active duty is in their order window and their negotiating orders, the reservists, we already have our orders to go back to our NOSC, Naval Operations Support Center. That's the building where reserves do all their operations out of. I had orders to go back there and report. I was given a certain amount of time from the time that I graduated A school that I needed to check in with them. I checked in with them within a month. They gave me a drill schedule. They assigned me to a unit, and I had to show up there at that drill weekend in uniform and kind of learn the ropes that way. I went through an indoctrination class, no different than if somebody were to go to a different unit on the active side. But everything up to that point of when everybody gets orders is pretty much the same for active and reserve. The main difference is just who we check in with rather than the active side. But the other cool thing, too, is, well, at least I think about the reserves, is you're not necessarily locked into a location. If I got a job working for IBM or something over in Washington State, I can go apply to move my reserve unit over there to Washington State without completing a time commitment or anything like that. Just find a unit that I can drill with and put in a request in, and boom, there I go over to Washington State.
Oh, that's great. Good flexibility.
Yes.
So the other thing, too, is, okay, just because you're in the reserves, right? And I'm not trying to treat it like a separate thing, but it is kind of separate from just a, time that you're spending there, right? You still have to do the same things that the active duty people do, right? So you still have PRTs, you still have inspections, you have everything, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, we still have PRT. We still have to have our PHA. Our yearly physical has to be updated. We still got to be within uniform standards. We have to maintain a uniform sea bag, all those kinds of things. In the reserves, you want to be fully ready to where if there was a mass amount of need for an LS to go work in the active side, that you can literally just transport yourself from where you are to over there. So the expectation is that we maintain that same level of readiness like active duty.
Okay. So, guys, keep your hair cut, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You stay in shape, right? Because you still have all those things you have to do.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, cadets, make sure that if you have any questions, you're putting them in the window so we can get those answered. So another question that comes out from time to time is, would you change anything about what your experience has been so far? And these are really deep philosophical questions, right? So it's maybe not what you expected when you said, okay, sure, I'll do your show, right? And we'll limit it to the Navy experience. We don't have to get into everything else, right? But, from what the decisions that you made right now, right? And we're talking specifically Navy reserves and things like that. Is there any that you would have possibly changed, and why?
That is actually a common question that we get on the recruiting side, and it never fails. It always feel like blown back by it. Looking back on it, I feel like I went through every decision that I made and every experience for a reason. Had I done things different, I probably would have chosen an active duty path rather than a reserve path. I joined when I was 18 and no intention of going to college. And so I probably could have done that. I also, I feel like I could have known a little bit more about the Navy ROTC scholarship for school. That would have been something that I could have worked a little bit harder towards. I think that's one of the most underutilized scholarships that's out there, the Navy ROTC scholarship. At least knowing a lot more, I don't think I knew much of anything before I went. And that's kind of where I kick myself and why I try to make sure that everybody knows what they're getting into, because I learned so much along the way that I should have known before I went. So it's hard to say. Yes, I probably should have gone active, but looking back in retrospect, every single step of the way molded me into who I am. So I can't say that I regret or would go back on any of it.
Right. Exactly. There's always that what if, or I should have, or what. You can't live your life there, right? But except, of course, when you have questions like this, and then you can live your life there and feel really bad about yourself. So so you did talk just a second ago about NROTC, right? So, a lot of our cadets follow that path. They all want to go to the academy. They all want NROTC scholarships. They all want to do that type of stuff. In your capacity, do you work in that as far as like helping move cadets towards that process? Because that process is pretty onerous. And we'll just NROTC academy, forget it, right? But NROTC, do you support that, and do you have advice in regards to that?
Absolutely. Please apply. 100%. Please apply for it. The worst that somebody can say is no. Absolutely. Please apply. And in a recruiting capacity, we are there to help. There are certain things, like they have to be interviewed, certain career paths. They have to be interviewed by an officer. So we kind of coordinate some of that. Different paperwork that has to be filled out. We have the ability to print it out, any sort of clarification. We're also told to make ourselves available for that. A person can concurrently apply to enlist and apply for the ROTC scholarship. They can do both of them, and in most cases you get a little bit more favor in the ROTC world. And if you do get selected for the scholarship, then they just shred your enlistment contract. So that way you at least have both of those, backup plans. You have all that organized. But please, I wish everybody would apply. Absolutely. Please apply.
So cadets, you hear that, right? So
yes, there's nothing. It doesn't cost anything. Please apply.
and just like anything else, for NROTC, this is just my personal experience with this, is that, in addition to that, you're also working on your SATs, right? You also need to apply to the university or college that you want to be in. So you have to actually, get accepted there to apply your scholarship is there. So those of you who are in your junior year, right, or even sophomore year, right, you're crushing it taking SAT practice exams and all that stuff. Yeah, that's fine. And what Petty Officer Dembowski was saying right at the very beginning is that you have to put in the work for this. This is your future, right? And when we're saying about all that which is necessary for you to achieve your goal, that's part of it, right? That it's too easy to sit back on the couch and play some more video games or watch former TikTok apps or whatever. But all of that, if this is something that you want, there is so much work out there that you have to do, but it's absolutely worth it, especially when you have people like Professor Dembowski in recruiting, which are trying to help you achieve that goal. So, don't pass that up. It's really worth your future.
Yeah.
So I want to wrap up our presentation here. Okay. With that one question. So, here we go. So I'm going to give you that one question that our cadets always like to ask, and usually they compete who's going to ask it first in the chat window. So thank you a lot, cadets. I see you do that, right? So here's that question, and think about it, and then we'll see how it goes. So here's the question. So if you were to describe the Navy in just one word, what would it be, and why? No pressure.
That's a really good question.
It's harder than you think, right?
So golly, there's so many. I think that the big word that keeps coming up in the forefront is leadership. Okay. I've learned a lot about leadership just wearing this uniform. I've worked for phenomenal leaders. I've worked for quite the opposite kind of leaders. But on the Navy side, we have to do some level of training every time that we make rank. There's the mentorship programs that the Navy has. But leadership, I think, is the biggest word that I would use there. That's probably the best word that I would use. Diversity also, kind of like how I was talking about earlier. Navy is very diverse, but those two, yeah, definitely. I learned a lot about leading just by the Navy.
That's good. But they're both great words. And to your point, right? From leaders, you learn good traits and you learn bad traits, and then you mold that into what you wish to be, right? So the bad's always useful. It may not seem like it at the time, but it's always useful.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Professor Dembowski, I really want to thank you for taking time to share your story. And you gave a tremendous amount of good advice. So, cadets, I certainly hope you lock this away. Watch this video over and over again, because there's some really good advice here of things to think about your future. And that's really what we want, right? What we want is for you to be successful in your lives, whatever success is as defined by you. But you've seen a great example of how to leverage now the Navy Reserves in order for you to be successful. So think about things, make good decisions, and what we learned is ask about 1 million questions. The only question that you shouldn't ask is, well, there isn't one, right? Make these recruiters answer your questions. Hound them. That's what they're there for. And guess what? They appreciate it, because as we learned, there's tremendous satisfaction of putting in a future sailor into the service and having them change their lives. So you're at a good position right now, cadets. In order to do that, think about it and never give up. So Professor Dembowski, again, thank you very much for being part of our presentation today. Truly appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. I feel honored to be here.
Thank you. And, oh, by the way, I was reminded, right, that many reservists, when they do their 2 weeks of active duty, they actually support Sea Cadet trainings. So think about that, right? Not this year, because we're all doing virtual trainings, but tell your fellow reservists, if they want to be part of our program, absolutely. Get in touch with their local Sea Cadet units, or we can help at the national level. But we're always looking for their experience to help augment our training. And people like yourselves who have those great skills, welcome aboard. We really would appreciate it.
Okay, yeah, definitely.
Okay. So now I just sold you in the Sea Cadet Corps. Fantastic. So, cadets, once again, you will get the online quiz. The link will be available shortly. Take that quiz. If not everything was covered in the quiz, and I know a few things weren't because I wrote the quiz, look it up on the internet. Also, slow down. Put down the proper email addresses, okay? So if you don't fill them out right, you're not going to get your questions or your responses back, and you may not get your drill credit. So make sure you're putting in the right email addresses. But most importantly, if you enjoyed this presentation, and you know you did, just smash that like button. Get us that thumbs up that we like, and we really appreciate the effort. So thank you very much. So on behalf of myself, Petty Officer Quinlan, Petty Officer Morales, who did a great job getting us back up live. Always appreciate it. It's a hard machine to run, but we, really appreciate you working super hard in order to make this happen. My name is Warrant Officer David Sheets. I appreciate your time, and we will see you next time for a next